Hey there everybody. I just wanted to make a quick video and talk a little bit about illusions and our curiosity about life, because it's something I was thinking about, and I thought it was an important thing to share. It's something that's so obvious to all, well, I shouldn't say obvious, but most people are aware that our perceptions are very biased, of course, but they're biased because of our experiences that we've had in the past. An example would be our reaction to a situation. If you hear a loud sound and you tend to cower or jump, or if someone goes to high-five you and you hide your face away. These are programs from our past, such as we're afraid we're going to get hit. So something as simple as a guy raising his hand to another guy, one person could take that as a threat, another could take it as a, hey, right on. And if you're not aware of how complicated illusions really can be, I would recommend watching several of the videos and shows and reading up. I have a book called Hallucinations by Oliver Sacks. It talks about the type of hallucinations that people have who have certain types of brain damage or other conditions where they'll have something like pareidolia, which is where you see faces and everything. And I think everybody can relate to that one. You look at anything, a mop handle, or anything with 2 points and a little line, and it looks like a face. And that's a natural carryover from our evolution. It was very, very important to be able to see faces hiding in the bushes when you were out there facing easy death. And now today we kind of carry that on into our modern culture, if you want to call it culture. I found it fascinating because there's also apophenia. Now, apophenia is very similar to pareidolia, but it takes place in the mind, just like your vision does, of course. When you see something, most of what we see, your brain is filling in, and a lot of people don't realize that we have a very narrow field of vision, and that your brain fills in a lot of the blanks. So, folks who are always seeing shadow beings in the corner of their vision and whatnot, the more you believe in that, and the more that you carry yourself with that belief, then the more it will probably happen to you and occur to you. This, I don't want to get too into the depths of it, because this is the root of a lot of spiritual beliefs, a lot of political beliefs, a lot of personal ideals about what the universe is. And I guess the message that I'm trying to get across here is that we all see things very differently. And there are certain common threads. But, a person could say, well, generally we're all the same. You see the same green I see, and you see the same wall in front of you, and the stereo, what a camera, whatever it might be. Yes, but the perception of what you're seeing, your brain is what's creating that picture. And if you are associating what you're seeing with different connotations from your past, this is where we see things differently. Like, for example, you and I will both see a knife. If a person's been stabbed before, their mind's going to go right to that. If you're a chef, your mind's going to go right to that. Everybody's going to have their own, not just maybe it looks the same, but what your brain is seeing it as is just as tied in with your emotions. And this is why some people are so threatened by, let's say, either removing certain legislations or passing certain laws, because their perception of reality is based on their circumstances and what they think is reality. And this is one of the hardest things to overcome as a society, to realize that we are all living within the same universe, but there is no consensus reality, because what's real is very dependent upon how we perceive things. There's a show on Netflix called Brain Games. It was really good. Actually, I found there was another season on there the other day, and I watched some more of them. But they're pretty much the same as the, past shows that I've seen. They'll show you an illusion and say, what do you see in this picture? And it's, oh, it's a circle. And you find out that it's not really a circle. Or where they'll have you stare at a dot, and then a picture will appear in the background. These are pretty amazing. A picture will appear in the background, and you'll see color in that picture. You'll see it full color, like green, green trees and red brick buildings and everything, because your brain is filling in the color. But the minute you look at the picture, you realize it's black and white. These little lessons we can learn about our brains and how much we really do fill in the blanks, I think, is one of the most crucially important things that we can all learn, because it's something that seems to be left out. People say, well, you've got to understand where you come from, and you have to have a religious belief or a non-religious belief, and this is the right side of politics, and this is the correct way to live your life, and this is how you're going to get into heaven, or this is how you're going to reincarnate, all these different things. But it really comes down to how those people perceive, their lives. Let me give you an example. If you are a person who is constantly, the good example is the telephone thing. You think of a friend, and then a few seconds later your phone rings, and you just know it's them because you were thinking about them. It doesn't necessarily mean we're psychic. What it can mean is the other 5,000 plus times in the last week that you've thought about friends that the phone hasn't rang, we don't notice. But the minute something happens where there's a synchronicity or a connection, we pick it up. And this is, I think, a very complicated issue, because a lot of us have synchronicities that are so far beyond the norm that it's very difficult to attribute it to chance. But even if we're discussing things in a group, and then maybe somebody else makes a video and you're like, oh, I was just thinking about that. Well, if the group was already talking about these things, I guess what I'm saying is it's important to be able to distinguish a truly amazing coincidence from a standard coincidence, which ends up, we pick up, because of those primal circuits which are activated when we see a pattern. We are pattern recognizing machines. That is what we do the best. Unfortunately, that can get out of hand with, like, apophenia, with seeing connections through seemingly connected things that are completely unrelated. Now, a person could say, well, everything's connected. And I would say, that's great, but that doesn't help you understand the world around you better. Everything is connected, but in what way? Not in the way we're talking about. We are all in the same universe. We're all made of the same star stuff, the same matter. We may all be in the same energy field and just be in this invisible, this holographic reality. None of that matters, because here we are. I'm solid when I wake up, okay? So I'm dealing with life in the terms that I'm living it, the terms that I was given. And it's very interesting to watch my own pattern recognition, to see how I want to believe certain things are true, and say, well, is it or isn't it? And there is a certain amount of healthy belief, which I think I should point out here, that it's not about looking at all these connections and saying, oh, that's just my brain playing tricks on me, nothing's really true, or nothing really matters. But rather to be able to know when we're just seeing an illusion, whether it be of our own making or someone else's, and then really get more involved in the things in our lives that are very difficult to explain, because the most meaningful things in our lives have not even been touched by any scientific inquiry, or at least not to the point of our satisfaction. These are things that we have to work out on our own, and that's part of our own hallucinatory state, or our own delusional state that we all carry around with us. We have to pretend that we know something. We can't just go along life saying, well, everything's invisible, nothing's real, and so finding that balance, that equilibrium between saying, yeah, some things are just mysteries in life, and, well, not every time I see a certain pattern does it mean that the Illuminati are out to get me. One of the places this is extended into is the conspiracy realm. And if you look at not just people who believe in conspiracies, because I believe in plenty of conspiracies. I mean, I've seen enough evidence to know that they happen all the time. Of course they do. It's a group of people conspiring against others. But believing, let's say, that there's a worldwide conspiracy and that everything has been planned through history for this moment. There are huge groups of people out there who believe that. And it's because it's much easier to believe that there's a plan than to believe that we actually have a say in things and that we have to help make a change. It's easier to point the finger at the big bad boogeyman and the government as being the only enemy, rather than taking it upon ourselves to really figure out what's real. This has led to the epidemic of, well, what originally was false flag attacks, which led into fake news, which now is into crisis actors. All these words change, the terminology changes, but the idea is the same. Nobody believes what they see because they know they've been lied to. In their pattern, they found out that they'd been lied to so many times, they started to believe that everything they heard was a lie. And it's my personal belief that being in that mindset is probably one of the most damaging ways to think. Because if you believe that everyone is the enemy and everyone's out to get everyone else, your life is going to be utterly miserable. I guarantee it. So that's just speaking from my point of view, one guy. But I've been in the conspiracy realm, so I know where that leads. It leads nowhere. And it's not going to solve anything. So I bring that up just because that seems to be one of the biggest patterns that we recognize is corruption. And so when we see corruption in politics or in religion, for example, with, priests and little kids, that kind of stuff, we tend to ascribe that to the whole and say, this is all corrupt. Everyone involved in this is part of this, because otherwise we have to get in there and actually pick through and see who's honest, who's not. Are these people for real? I mean, for example, there would be nothing worse than being a Catholic priest in today's world who is a straightforward, honest person who would never harm a child. Because people are going to be like, oh, you're a Catholic priest, and just assume you're corrupt. Just like saying if you're in politics and you say, yeah, I'm a senator, a lot of people just say, oh, you're in the pocket of everyone else. And in a lot of cases it's true. It's just that we're picking up on the patterns, and we have to be fair not to assume that every time we see something, it fits into our way of thinking. Because it doesn't. Things are much more complicated, much richer, and the reasons why we hold our personal opinions on life are so much more complicated than we can explain to even our family or friends. Therefore, how can we expect two opposing sides on any issue to really have a productive conversation where they're both gaining something? It can be done. It is done in some instances, and over time we work it out.